2, I respectfully point out that the above-mentioned bid was awarded prior to my award within the prior to my appointment within the city of Tshwane. I accordingly confirmed that I was not able, nor would it have been possible or practical for me to assist either directly or indirectly any bidder in relation to the said bid at the stage of its original award. I do, however, place on record, Chair, that I later and more fully explained below participated in the consideration of extensions of the said bid. This was as a result of the fact that a replacement tender had not been finalized and put in place at this stage. To avoid any misunderstanding, I deem it necessary to explain the ordinary process which must be followed by any specific individual who serve on that committee. In this instance, Tshwane Metro Police Department submitted a request for the extension of bid to be considered by the BAC. In my capacity as the chairperson, I presided over the meetings at which the requests for extensions were considered. My involvement in that regard was confined to the discharge of my official responsibilities within the prescribed governance and committee processes applicable to such extensions. Paragraph 66. Officials from TMPD make the necessary representations, Chair, setting out the reasons why extensions must be made for TMPD 2, 2016-17. These presentations are then considered by the BAC. After due consideration, will make a recommendation in accordance to the applicable process. The final decision in this respect, of course, of approval of any such extensions does rest with the accounting officer. I state, Chair, for the record, that all submission applications in relation to the extension for the relevant contract were prepared, managed by the duly authorized representatives of TMPD in accordance with their respective responsibilities. In my capacity as the chairperson, I presided over the following meetings at which extensions were considered by the BAC. In total, there were about 5 extensions which were brought. These extensions, I want to reiterate, are brought on board by the user department, in this case TMPD. They come to BAC, they say, this tender is expiring, we still need the service, please can you extend this project as a result of this not being finalized. On the first instance, on the 20th of February 2025, an official who is delegated by TMPD comes to BAC, Mr. Veli Nandule, requests for an extension. This extension, Chair, is not granted. An GM4 has been attached, and I would like us to go and discuss the reasons why this initial extension was not granted. On GM4, on the paginated bundle for the second bundle, I think this has been captured under at the beginning. So at the beginning of the pack, Chair, on page 38, I've got GM4 that has been attached for the commission scrutiny, page number 38. So on page number 38, you can see that the individual comes to BAC. He asks for an approval on the extension of TMPD 02 for a period not exceeding 4 months with effect from the 1st of March. He further asks, or TMPD further asks for an additional amount of 227 million rand within this period for the extension of these services. 3, it gives us a cost center or a GL, which we utilize to pay for this extension services. 4, they also request for an revision price escalation in line with the CIRA rates for the period of appointment. They then give a list of the bidders that must be attended to or extended. BAC raises significant exceptions on these requests that are being brought on board. First of all, Chair, budget issues are not considered by BAC. This is the procurement committee that is there to look at supply chain management regulations, supply chain management policy and functions of that nature. Can't come to BAC and ask for additional funds. That's a process that you need to undertake either with the accounting officer or during the budget period. Secondly, ask for price escalation, which is something completely out of the purview of BAC. So during those discussions, Chairperson, this report is referred back on the basis that, firstly, there were inconsistencies in terms of the start date of this particular tender. Secondly, the approval for upliftment of funds and an additional request for 227 million was outside the purview of BAC. Thirdly, an amount of 227 million rand was not clear to us, Chair. It was not clear to us, Chair, that this falls within the 15% variation. We also noted that failure to re-advertise the tender on time indicated a massive element of poor planning from the BAC perspective, and that all budget-related issues are not covered here and should be removed completely. So for those reasons, this report is referred back for the colleagues at TMPD to reconsider their submission and make sure that it's within the ambit of the law. I then go back, Chair, to 67 on page 16 of my sworn statement. On this, Chair, I want to discuss the second sitting where we're considering this extension on the 27th of February. Mr. Veli Nwandule comes to PAC, supported by the Deputy Chief Umashi Dlamini, for a request or to clarify on the issues that had previously been rejected on this particular bid. Again, Chair, with your permission, GM5 has been attached as an annexure. I would request that we go to GM5, scrutinize the details of that annexure, and assess its relevance to my submission today. GM5.
Just a minute. Mr. Shaskalson, do you think perhaps I should address this to you too, Mr. Van der Geven. Do we want to go to the detail of why the various requests were made and also why they were either approved or not approved? Do we want to deal with all of those individually?
Chair, I can't say no. I mean, I don't intend to address all of them, but there will be some which may be relevant.
All right. Yes, Mr. Minister, please continue.
Chairperson, I'm on bundle 2, page 40, references GM5. On GM5, TMPD officials come back to PAC, clarifying on the issues of concern. And amongst those issues on concern, they are in short stating to the PAC that these were your concerns and these are our responses to those concerns. The first one, at the bottom, if you go to page number 41. On page 41, we summarize the discussions of that engagement. And during these discussions, the meeting held on the 27th, amendments were done as recommended by the Bid Adjudication Committee. They're providing us with assurance that these issues have been dealt with accordingly. Secondly, the previous indication stated that the contract had expired was correct, and therefore the report stated that the tender was still valid. Until 28th of February 2024, and therefore does not require a request for deviation. There was a concern from PAC that this contract had expired. You must ask for a deviation. They then clarified to us by providing the SLAs that this tender was still valid. The department further confirmed that the amount requested, Chair, was below the 15% mark threshold and was within the variation or the scope as allowed by the law. SLAs from service providers stated that the date for resuming duty was the 1st of March. The department also confirmed that due diligence wasn't done in confirming that all SLAs contained commencement date of 1st of March 2022, which of course gave rise to the concerns which were raised by the PAC, thereby confirming that all 22 contractors commenced their duty on the 1st of March 2022. Thereafter, the committee requested that the department to provide the SLAs stipulating the commencement date of the 1st of March for all 22 bidders for the filing and packaging, that the contract has moved from the original date to the new date and that it was imposing challenges in dealing with them, that we confirm that the signed SLAs were signed by the former acting city manager, and thereafter delegations were made to these SLAs to the relevant TMPD officials. Metro Police Department should verify and provide the status of the people or the persons who are currently signing SLAs on behalf of the city in terms of their delegation of authority. Verification of the persons who signed 22 SLAs be sent to members of the committee as per the recommendation of the report. That copies of all SLAs confirming that the contract commenced on the 1st of March must be part of the approval pack. The department must provide confirmation that the amount of 4 months extensions was still within. These were all matters, Chair, that were provided to accordingly. They could be adequately addressed and validated by the PAC. Hence, you'll see that the resolutions from 42 to 44 have been catered for accordingly and that it is granted. The point of this, Chair, is for me to show the committee the process of extensions. That extensions cannot be done by a one-man show. There is an articulate process and system that have been designed within the city to ensure that extension applications are considered. Also, extension applications that are considered are not just approved, they are intentionally scrutinized and probed for any deficiencies which result to issues of this nature. Chairperson, I will request to go back to my sworn statement. On my sworn statement, I now want to deal with page number 16 again. On page 16, I want to touch on the third time when an extension application is brought to the BAC. I'm on page 16 of the sworn statement. On the 26th of June, Mr. Rivo Space comes to BAC, request for an extension application for the existing tender as well. GM6 has been made available for the committee to scrutinize. Maybe, Chair, if I can touch on the 25th of September as well. So there are two instances where the Deputy Chief Rivo Space comes to BAC on the 26th of June 2025 and the 25th of September 2025, requesting for an extension application on the TMPD tender under scrutiny being TMPD 02, 2016-2017. I will then want us to move back to the second bundle so we can scrutinize the GM6 as well as GM7 and what the contents of discussions were, Chair. GM6 and GM7 start on page 45, Chair. On page 45, we then start with GM6. And you'll take note there's a big difference on this, Chair. This does not come as an extension application anymore. It comes as a Regulation 36 supply chain management request. It's an outright deviation to appoint these same bidders. The reason for this is that BAC could not allow another extension on the basis that, firstly, we advise the department to ensure that they put systems in place to advertise the tender and fast-track the appointment process, one. Secondly, the 15% variation was depleted. There was no way that we could provide another extension. So TMPD then came on board knowing that with an outright deviation. So apparently from their perspective, they still needed the service. And within that service, as a result of the new tender not being finalized, came to BAC asking for an outright deviation. Within this, Chair, BAC of course scrutinized the application, has significant discussions with the TMPD presenter, in this case the DC Rivo Space, and the deviation report is articulated as due to the reasons of finalizing the procurement process and delays in the probity report. Are some of the reasons that are provided by the DC Rivo Space. However, taking into account in the above, there is a huge element of poor planning that will be considered by oversight bodies or auditors like your Auditor General. The BAC then recommends that this will attract Regulation 32, meaning it will be irregular expenditure. No matter what motivation you can bring on board, there's no way you can convince a third party that it's as a result of internal processes. It's poor planning. It will be irregular expenditure. It must be investigated as such. We'll take note, Chair, that recommendation number 5 on page 47. As much as BAC provides the approval, taking into account the significance of this tender as presented by DC Rivo Space, that cities' assets will remain unprotected, we have to raise an issue that this will attract irregular expenditure. It must be investigated accordingly. It must be reported to the Municipal Public Accounts Committee. It must be recorded and referred to Group Audit and Risk for further investigations, and it must be disclosed in the city's annual financial statements as such, any expenditure towards this. It is then approved and recommended to the accounting officer, who then approves it accordingly on page number 49, with the recommendation that this is an outright irregular expenditure. It must be investigated in line with the processes of Section 32 of the Municipal Finance Management Act. Similarly with GM7, hence I'm touching the instances of the 25th of June and the 25th of September concurrently. Similarly on GM7, GM7 is on page 50, Chair. And on page 50, we'll take note that the DC Rivo Space come to BAC again, and the reasons why there has been delays and that motivates for this extension is a result of the probity process currently undertaken. It has not been finalized. It's still in the process of being validated. Hence, they came back and they asked for another extension in the form of a Section 36 outright deviation. Similarly, BAC probes this and provides a similar recommendation that the service is indeed key. We don't dispute that from the department. However, supply chain management prescripts and the law, there has been deficiencies that have been identified. There's no way that we can account to this not being irregular expenditure. We then recommend under item number 5 that this must be treated as section 32 of the MFMA. Irregular expenditure must be implemented it must be referred to the relevant structures for further investigations. Further, it must be disclosed in the city's annual financial statements as part of our irregular disclosure note.